Testing.
Good morning. My name is Seher Kohl, and I serve as president of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg. Welcome to this special gathering, the last service of the year. As we reflect on the past year, we prepare to face the challenges that 2025 may bring. I'm sure that together as a welcoming, all-inclusive congregation, we will navigate these uncertainties with the support and love of one another. If you're joining us for the first time this morning, we can't wait to meet you and spill the beans on all the quirks and the joys of our congregation. Please fill out a visitor card and place it in an offering plate during the service. The visitor card may be found in the pocket on the back of the chair in front of you. Now let me dive in and share some announcements with you. Kicking things off, we have our Path to Membership class. If you ever wondered what it is like to be a part of the UUCS family, this is your golden ticket. Join us on Sunday, right after service, January 12th, to dive into the wonderful world of Unitarian Universalism with us. We'll be serving up lunch and taking care of the little ones so you can focus on all the good stuff. Just jot your name down on the sign-up sheet on the whiteboard in the hallway or send us an email at membership@uucs.org. We can't wait to welcome you. Next up is a very important announcement about our congregational meeting. The UUCS Board of Trustees has called for this meeting on Sunday, February 9th. We will be voting on a shiny new endowment policy and procedure. This fresh policy is designed to tidy up the old guidelines that may have left some of us scratching our heads. Want to get the scoop? Join us for an informational session on January 12th after the service, and we will answer all of your questions. You can also track down the links to the new policy and the previous documents in this week's happening, or send an email to office@uucs.org. And don't forget about our epic 2025 church retreat at the mountain. Mark your calendars, April 25 to 27, and join us at the stunning UU Mountain Retreat Center in North Carolina. Registration is now open, so get ready to secure your spot for an adventure. You can find the registration link in the Connect, the Happenings, and the upcoming Unison. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to our retreat gurus. I see one of them, Ann Garner, or Virginia McLean. Thank you for your attention and your presence this morning, making this a brighter place and a welcoming community for all of us.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly Hall, and I will be serving as your worship associate this morning. I want to add my welcome to Sahers on this stormy final Sunday of the year. So I'm sad to say that our planned guest speaker, Elliott McCarthy, the spiritual leader of our sister congregation, B'nai Israel, is ill, and he won't be able to join us this morning. Instead, our assistant minister, Reverend Ann Garner, will deliver a meditation titled, Just a Little More. So I just want to take a moment to recognize and thank Ann. When we learned of Elliott's illness yesterday afternoon, she was out with friends enjoying the day, and she was texting back and forth with me to make sure we had a backup plan, and she prepared this meditation on very little notice. So I'm sure, like me, you've all enjoyed Ann's warmth, her wisdom, and she's a wonderful leader. So I just wondered if we could take a moment and thank Ann for jumping in today and for all she does for our community. For the lighting of our chalice today, we have a reading from the American poet W.S. Merwin. Merwin twice won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry and twice served as U.S. Poet Laureate. He is the son of a Presbyterian minister who became a devout Buddhist later in his life, so it seems appropriate for a congregation. And Merwin believed that there is a desperate hope built into poetry that you can hear in the lines for today. To the new year. With what stillness at last you appear in the valley, your first sunlight reaching down to touch the tips of a few high leaves that do not stir, as though they had not noticed and did not know you at all. Then the voice of a dove calls from far away in itself to the hush of the morning. So this is the sound of you, here and now. Whether or not anyone hears it, this is where we have come with our age, our knowledge such as it is, and our hopes such as they are, invisible before us, untouched, and still possible. Sorry, Taffy. If you would, please join us in singing hymn number 15, The Lone Wild Bird. And I'll just have to grab my hymn.
In lofty flight is
of the important traditions of our congregation is the Rippling Bowl. When we come together, we bring all of ourselves, including our joys and celebrations, our sorrows and concerns. Coming forward to place a stone or shell in the Rippling Bowl is a way to symbolize sharing those joys and sorrows. It is a symbol of our shared life together. In a moment, I will invite you to come forward to the Rippling Bowl as you desire, and I will place a stone and a shell in the bowl for those of you joining us virtually. Please come forward.
Now I heard there was a sacred chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the martyr lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Maybe there's a God above, but all I ever learned from love was how to shoot at someone who outdrew you. And it's not a cry you see at night, it's not somebody who has seen the light, it's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. You say I took the name in vain. I don't even know the name, but if I did, well, really, what's it to you? There's a blaze of light in every word. Doesn't matter what you heard, the holy or the broken. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I've told the truth, I didn't come to fool ya. And even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord of Song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
We gather to intentionally and hopefully create a loving community. We are connected by our shared commitment, and we express that commitment through a covenant that expresses our pledge to ourselves and to our greater community and world. The words can be found in the order of service. Please join me in reciting our covenant. With courage, we say, we are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of a love beyond belief. As many of you may know, this is only my second year in the congregation, but one of the things I loved was the incredible welcome you all gave me when I joined. So one of the ways that we express our community is by connecting with one another during our service. This is a chance to greet old friends, welcome someone new, or to sit quietly and enjoy the joyful expressions of others. In a moment, I will invite you to begin greeting one another, but please listen for the music. Taffy will give us that lovely cue that it's time to return to our seats. So please, let the greeting begin. I want to apologize if you could not hear me. I didn't realize I wasn't standing close enough to the microphone, so I want to thank one of our members for this helpful feedback. So can everyone hear me now? No, now? Okay, you're right, I have to be really close. Okay, this is a giving community, and we all give differently. Sometimes we give of our time, sometimes our talent, and sometimes of our treasure, as you will be invited to do when we pass the offering plate. In addition to the funds that support this church, every month we share the plate by choosing to support an important organization or cause in our local community or beyond. We give half of the donations in the offering plate, as well as all of any designated funds to this cause. This month, we are sharing the plate with the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Swannanoa Valley, which was greatly impacted by Hurricane Helene. So the offering will now gratefully be received.
Each year we hold a service in honor of the celebration of Hanukkah, and it is important to say why we do this. We hold this celebration not in imitation or copying, but in honor and in solidarity. First, we do this in support of members of our congregation for whom Judaism is their spiritual path or part of their identity and ancestry. We are here to support each other. Second, we do this in solidarity with our sister congregation, B'nai Israel in Spartanburg, and in solidarity with all of our Jewish siblings in our community and around the world during a time of rising anti-Semitism. We know from our own history that it is vitally important to speak out in favor of all people and against the oppressions that threaten them. And in that same spirit of solidarity, we do this in a time of war to challenge our own consciousness for the wisdom these traditions offer us all, and for our awareness that our best stories can be put to nationalistic and inhumane purposes, especially during times of war and atrocity. Our congregation's purpose is the mutual thriving of all beings, and this celebration challenges us to consider how we create that world of mutual thriving from this one of corruption, disastrous conflict, and violence. Will you join me in silence? I want to begin this morning with a reading from the second book of Maccabees. Judas Maccabeus and his followers purified the temple and built a new altar. Then, with new fire started by striking flint, they offered sacrifice for the first time in 2 years, burned incense, lighted the lamps, and set out the sacred loaves. After they had done all this, they lay face down on the ground and prayed. They rededicated the temple on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, the same day of the month on which the temple had been desecrated by the Gentiles. The happy celebration lasted 8 days, like the Festival of Shelters, and the people remembered how only a short time before they had spent the Festival of Shelters wandering like wild animals in the mountains and living in caves. But now, carrying green palm branches and sticks decorated with ivy, they paraded around, singing grateful praises to him who had brought about the purification of his own temple. Everyone agreed that the entire Jewish nation should celebrate this festival each year. The story of Hanukkah is the story of a miracle. The miracle of fuel in the oil lamp in the temple in Jerusalem burning for 8 days, while the temple was being reconsecrated after it was defiled by an offshoot of the Greek and Macedonia Empire, even though there did not seem to be enough oil. Whatever we each may think of miracles, however they may happen, whether by divine act or sheer luck or happy miscalculation of oil stores, or somebody keep finding enough oil to keep the lamp illuminated and kept adding to the fuel to the flame. This is a story about finding a reserve of energy to do something we know we need to do, not only for ourselves, but for our people, our community, maybe even our nation, even though our energy seems depleted, and we are sure it will run out. Have you ever felt that way before? I want to ask you to think of a story of a time you were worn out and you saw a situation you knew you needed to address, and somehow you summoned enough energy to do that one further act of care. Maybe at work, maybe here in this congregation, maybe in your family. Anytime, anywhere, just think of a time. A story of summoning the energy to help or to serve when you thought you had none left, and you found it and did what was needed. this piece might be a little terrifying to me, but I'm going to ask you to share a short, economically phrased, as if we were barely have enough oil, version of your story. Does anybody want to share a moment that you felt that exhaustion, but you still powered through?
Yeah, I will. Shall I do it from right here?
Sure.
Good. I quit my job back in 1970, and I got out on the road trying to stir up enough business to survive. Because I've been out all week, and I was ready to go home, really discouraged. So I stopped by one place, the Kohler plant out here on the highway, and I said, I'll go in and tell them I'm in solvent reclaim business, which I was not in. And I started to the front gate, and it started raining on me. And I said, can you do it? I'm going back to the car and go home and have a drink. So, and then I remembered my mother, who sold world books, and the first sales call she ever made, the lady just slammed the door in her face. And she came back and really mad, ready to burn the house down. But she kept going, and she ended up being in charge of Lower Alabama for world book sales. And I remembered her. And I turned around and went back in to the receptionist, and I said, I'm in the solvent reclaim business. Do you have any interest? And she said, well, I think we might. And I was shocked. And the manager that I met looked like he'd been waiting for me. So I went out and found some equipment and got in solvent reclaim. And that changed my life.
Thanks, Marion. Anybody else?
What came to mind for me was wrapping up 2 years of serving on the board here. And being quite fatigued from that, but having my heart pulled into continuing on the NBC committee. And just really finding my new footing, even in the exhaustion from that, because that work was so important. And so thankful for all of the work that came from that group.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for sharing and for pushing through your exhaustion, because that was great. Anybody else? Electra?
My son was ill and he's been ill. He was chronically ill and they put him on a breathing machine. He wasn't going to get off, and we've been doing 24 hours in the hospital. And we made the decision that because he hated that machine, that we would go ahead and pull the plug. And I did not think that I would have the strength to be with him. And I said to my husband, I'll be with you to make the decision. I'll be with you to sign the paperwork, but I can't stay. I can't be here when you pull the plug. But at the last minute, I went in, I sat down, I had my time with him, and when it was time to pull the plug, I stayed. I had the energy, I had the composure, I had what I needed. And I'm glad and grateful to this day that I had that. It was in me.
Thanks, Electra. I can remember a time like that, or a few. Actually, I can remember many times like that within one particular year. August 2021 to August 2022. Many of you have heard some of my stories from my year at the hospital, where I was doing a CPE residency, that's clinical pastoral education, and serving as a hospital chaplain. As you know, my year happened to coincide with the peak of COVID, so it was a really difficult year, working many hours each week at the hospital. Weekly, in addition to working every Monday through Friday to cover our assigned floors, we also had education one day a week and an overnight on call. I don't know how I was so lucky that happened this way so often, but our education day was almost always either the day of my on-call or the day I was post-call. It was a very unlucky draw of the calendar. When education was a post-call day, I would finish my on-call at 7 a.m. when I was relieved by another resident, and then would stick around the hospital for education all day. Mind you, I would have come into the hospital no later than 8 a.m. the day before, worked my floors, been gifted a couple hours in the afternoon for a hopeful nap in the on-call room before taking over the on-call pager and cell phone at 4 p.m. Let me just tell you that preemptive sleep is an elusive and rarely experienced thing. Now, some of you know that my on-calls tended to be doozies. It sometimes felt like things got saved up for when I was on call. Often, my colleagues would go through a night with a few calls and would get some sleep. Almost every one of my on-calls would entail no sleep and constant calls all over the hospital, at times having to triage which call was most critical for me to get to the fastest. I rarely got to spend time in the on-call room trying to catch a few Z's. Many mornings post-call, my on-call log would be 2 sheets of paper, while most people's was 1. When I finished those overnights, all I wanted to do was go home, take a shower, and fall into bed. But when we had education on those days, I had to power through another day of work. I was often completely wasted, having been up for over 24 hours when education started that morning. But somehow I would power through that day of education and then go home, shower, and fall into bed, often skipping dinner and just sleeping until the next morning. Yet that was not like having to be on call after an education day. Education days were not easy. Part of them would be presenting verbatims from patient encounters. Sometimes we would feel a little beat up at the end of those, hearing all the things and all the ways we could have done things better after putting a lot of work into preparing them and trying to do our best. It was definitely a way of learning and a way to improve our patient interactions, but sometimes it felt demoralizing. But the hardest part of education for me that year was what we called group, IPR, interpersonal relations, a time where we would discuss our experiences with peers and supervisors. These discussions were often difficult for me due to feeling like I was on an island of believing much differently than the members of my cohort. This is where many of those women can't be ministers conversations happened. This is where I had a really difficult conversation the week after Roe v. Wade was overturned, knowing that I felt different about it than my colleagues, and trying to help them understand the way I was feeling. This is where I would stand up for my LGBTQ+ siblings when colleagues would say difficult things. This was a heavy part of the day for me because I viewed the world so differently than the others. Thankfully, the staff chaplains were like-minded, and I felt very supported by them. When I was on call on education days, I would not get the gifted couple of hours for a nap. There really wasn't a nap, but I would try. So I would have to go from an often heavy day of education straight into my on-call, knowing that I would likely be in for a long night. The difficulty of these days was spending 15 hours walking alongside people in some of their darkest moments and still being fully present for them. When I said that my on-calls were doozies, this is what I mean. I would receive the pager and the on-call phone at 4 p.m., and they would go off regularly until I turned it over at 7 a.m. There were nights when I would have back-to-back-to-back traumas, multiple deaths, more traumas, a cardiac arrest, patients moving to comfort care, a code blue, another death or two, code strokes, and more, all in one night, hence the 2-page on-call log. This is what my on-calls looked like on a regular basis. One night I was called to 7 deaths, and I can't imagine that anyone in the hospital other than the chaplain would have to navigate that many deaths in one night. But somehow I made it through those nights, offering a ministry of presence to the many people who were navigating really difficult things, no matter how little energy I had, and no matter how dim my light felt. This is the economy of love, of providence, whether divine or human or both. When we are depleted, when we think we have nothing left, but we choose to do the one further act of love that we know is needed of us. We find, as if by miracle, that we do have the energy. And when we do that one further act, we can see the energy we have shared grow in the world. What a blessing as we head into this new year to know we can do what is needed of us, even when we feel spent.
Please join us in singing hymn 360, Here We Have Gathered.
Come
To extinguish our chalice today, we have a reading from the American poet Jonathan Green, The Return. We are heartened when each year the barn swallows return. They find their old nests, teach their young to fly, lining up on the barn roof for their first flight. They remind us, for now, some rituals of this good earth continue.
I don't know about you all, but 2024 has been a really hard year, and I am really glad that we are looking to the end of it. But I am so grateful for this place and all of you, and so I just want to encourage all of you to, when you are exhausted and think you cannot go, just shine the light that you each are.